Uber and Lyft is now going to be offering driverless rideshare cars, and I gotta say, this is a wild story to kick off the year. So it's officially the new year. Happy 2025, everybody. Happy New Year. I know I haven't posted a video in a while. It's been about a couple weeks, and I feel like I post almost daily on this channel. I was just in Mexico City and Tulum, so I just got back and figured maybe not the best, most positive, uplifting, optimistic story to kick off the year with. But as we talk about AI, ChatGPT, even in the music world, Suno and Udio are making waves a lot with AI right now. Self-driving cars have always been an issue for rideshare drivers, or a bit of a concern for Uber and Lyft drivers. And you can see right here that Uber and Lyft is now offering driverless rideshare cars. Customers in Austin and Atlanta will hail Waymo vehicles via the Uber app. The launch date has yet to be announced. There is some issues with Waymo. I've already done a bunch of videos about Waymo because Waymo right now here in Los Angeles is super popular. Anybody can download the Waymo app. So it's a little different, which we'll talk about a bit later in this video. But you can download the app, order it, and it's a self-driving car with no one else in it, and it's pretty crazy. And you can see here, two popular rideshare companies, basically the biggest ones, Uber and Lyft, are now preparing to offer a new feature, driverless taxis. They're training staff on how to maintain the autonomous vehicles ahead of their public launch in the upcoming months. Because customers in Atlanta, Georgia, and in Austin will be able to hail one of these driverless rideshare cars via the app when released. And there is some issues with this. Being honest, they're talking about like how Waymo's not perfect. There's some glitches going on, and all that kind of stuff. But basically, it's crazy because they debuted in LA in 2023. And right now, there's kind of like a running joke in LA saying like, oh, like Waymo spotted. Because now they're everywhere. Like in the beginning, it was like, whoa, it's a driverless car. But now it's like, customers in California and Arizona can hail Waymo, like I said, via the Waymo One app. And here's the thing. Here's the biggest one. Is that both Uber and Lyft are developing robotaxi partnerships to offer driverless rides in the future and get a cut from those fares. A bit of a short article, I know, but there's actually a lot to unpack here because kicking off the year in 2025, I know not the most optimistic, uplifting video to start off the year with, but this is a big thing, right? Because last year I did a video and I posted it. It was like a live vlog basically of the first time of me taking Waymo, and it was super trippy. Like you get in the car, and I thought there'd be someone else like in it with like a clipboard or I don't know, like basically someone else in it in case something goes wrong. No, you're fully in this car. It's fully driving. It's super trippy. Now I'm kind of used to it. Now I've taken Waymos and not a big deal. And in the beginning, to kind of bring things full speed to now, you had Waymos, but you had to be put on a wait list. I got lucky because I met actually a guy who was doing photography for Google. He had me download the app. I got put on the wait list, and then I got accepted. So I was one of the first people that I knew that got to be able to use the whole Waymo thing before it got released to the general public in a sense. Before it was like an invite code or wait list or whatever. Then, near the end of last year, they said, hey, completely open now to LA. Not only that, but they updated the radius. Before, it was like a small section where you could actually like order that Waymo to get picked up and dropped off. Then the radius got bigger. Then now anyone can download the Waymo app. And here's a very important thing when it comes to this, which I said I'll touch upon, is the Waymo app versus Uber and Lyft. Because this is where, to me, I get the most worried for drivers. I'm going to be honest. There's two things. Because anyone now in LA can go on their phone, download the Waymo app, very similar to downloading the Uber or Lyft app. But there is that step, meaning you have to go to your phone, sign in, download a new app, create a new account. We know the way this works, create a password that has like 12 characters plus a special number and a letter and all this kind of stuff. Add in your credit card, right? Which for a lot of people get very worried about putting their credit card into a new app. There's a lot of steps to, if you think about it, for the average consumer, and this is a big thing in psychology and business, the more steps that are involved, the more unlikely someone is to follow through. So to download the app, all this kind of stuff, a bit more. But here's the things that kind of really, at least to me, worrying me, is one, I mentioned this in another video, that Waymo is now cheaper than Uber and Lyft. Not always. It is a roll of the dice. But before, Waymo was always cheaper. Waymo was always more expensive. Sorry. It was always more expensive than Uber and Lyft. Uber and Lyft was always cheaper. So it's kind of like, okay, like it's kind of like a novelty. That's the way I looked at Waymo in the beginning. It's like, okay, it's kind of cool. You're in this car. It's trippy. It's like future and, the future happening right now, that kind of thing. But realistically, whatever. And now it is very common, and this is what a lot of people do when ordering an Uber or Lyft, is they say, oh, is Uber cheaper? Is Lyft cheaper? I'm going to pick whichever one. Now, though, it's very common here in LA, for example, for people to say, okay, is Uber cheaper or is Lyft or is Waymo? Now, granted, Waymo is not perfect. Like this article briefly touched upon, they went into some detail about like there's some glitches with Waymo. Waymo isn't perfect. I will say there have been reports showing that it's safer, but another huge issue with Waymo is people have taken advantage of the safety features. I've done a video about that, how there were these guys who kind of stopped a girl's Waymo to try to get her number and all this kind of stuff. In addition, Waymo also takes significantly longer than Uber and Lyft. Like, I mean, there's some times, like, if I want to get a Waymo, yeah, maybe cheaper. But it's almost like with Uber or Lyft, it's like, okay, it might take me, I don't know, 20 minutes to get there. But with a Waymo, it might be like 30 or 32 minutes. It might be significantly longer. However, if you look back in the day before, like, say, pre-pandemic, if you look at, Uber Pool or Lyft Line, which I know Uber still has UberX Share, but it's really not that popular anymore. It's not as worth it. Back in the day, you could save an insane amount of money taking Uber Pool or Lyft Line. And a lot of people said, like, yeah, it is going to take way longer to get where I'm going, but it's cheaper. So that's why people did Uber Pool and Lyft Line back in the day, right? So the first thing that kind of worries me about Waymo is the price. Just in general, the fact that it's getting cheaper and cheaper. But the second thing, now talking about this article, talking about why this article does kind of raise some red flags to me in the sense of I think drivers should now be worried or just be aware, is that when you go to, let's say, order an Uber or go to, let's say, order a Lyft, like you do normally, so you don't have to download a new app. You're just using the app that you've used for years. The car that could pull up is a Waymo. That is an issue. And it's kind of like that kind of thing, if you can't beat them, join them. Because what's interesting about Waymo is there's two almost, I mean, there could be multiple, but like there's two almost parts of Waymo that are intriguing to me and very important to understand. And they're kind of connected, kind of different. You have the Waymo app, but then you also have the Waymo vehicles. And those are actually two different things. They seem like the same thing, but they're two different things. The Waymo app, of course, is an app that you download on your phone. It's a separate app from other apps, separate from Uber and Lyft. You can use it to order Waymos. But then you have the Waymo vehicles, which are just kind of the vehicles, the self-driving vehicles themselves. And what's interesting is that Uber and Lyft, like I mentioned in this article, it's only being in like Atlanta, Austin, like a couple of different places to start. That when you go to order an Uber, when you go to order an Uber or a Lyft, the vehicle that's going to get there is a Waymo. And that, to me, is a bit alarming. That before, if let's say, and there's different ways or different levels of this, but let's say before, and this happened to me, I'll be honest. Let's say I go to order an Uber, or let's say a Waymo, just make it simple. And let's say the Waymo's cheaper, and I take that Waymo, I'm technically taking away a human's job, a human driver, a rider driver, an Uber driver. I'm taking away that ride from them because I'm choosing a Waymo over an Uber. But it is kind of like a tough versus thing where I'm like, all right, maybe I could pick either one. But with the Uber app, a lot of people don't like downloading new apps, like I said, and that was very important to mention. There's a lot of steps to getting a Waymo if you don't have the Waymo app. But the fact that you can order an Uber like you're doing normally, you already have an account. You already have your credit card on there. You already know how to use the Uber app. You feel comfortable with it. The fact that you can order an Uber and without any control to you, that makes sense, within reason. I mean, maybe they'll ask you, it's tough to say how they're going to do the GUI or the graphical user interface. But the fact that you can go to Uber, order a ride, and then Uber offers you a self-driving one as opposed to a human. When you initially went into it wanting a human driver or just an Uber driver in general, that means that they're directly choosing to give you the Waymos as opposed to an Uber driver. And this could be, I think, in my opinion, the first, there's been a lot of breadcrumbs, but this, to me, is probably one of the most alarming things I've seen. Like I said, the money, the fact that Waymo's cheaper, and the fact that when it comes to the self-driving cars that, they're just now being offered by Uber and Lyft, that to me, I'm not going to lie, is a bit alarming. That to me is very, very alarming because what that means is that when anyone now, like say in Austin or Atlanta or these other places, and it's tough to say when they're going to announce this, but that means when someone goes to order an Uber or Lyft and they could get a Waymo, that's a direct ride taken away from a human driver. And I think that's kind of crazy. I'm not gonna lie. And I know not the most optimistic way to start off 2025, I know. But that to me, even though it was a small article, I was like, whew, it's small, but it speaks volumes. It speaks volumes because I can see Uber and Lyft and Waymo doing a partnership everywhere. I don't know why they don't do it here in LA. That's actually kind of surprising that maybe Waymo doesn't want to deal with Uber and Lyft in LA because they're like, hey, like Waymo is its own thing. So they're like, hey, if we have our own app, we'd rather just keep everything in-house as opposed to working together with Uber and Lyft. Really tough to say how that's going to formulate because I think that's a big sign, but the fact that you can get a Waymo or self-driving car without having to download the app, create an account, all this kind of stuff is a bit alarming because these are rides being directly taken from human drivers.